Welcome to the Middle East Report. In this programme today, we'll be discussing the importance of standing up for Israel in Parliament as we discuss this year's annual lobby of Parliament organised by Christian Friends of Israel and the Zionist Federation. Warm welcome to the programme, and today's guest is Jacob Vince from Christian Friends of Israel and Arieh Miller, Executive Director of the Zionist Federation UK. So gentlemen, welcome to the programme.
Good to be here.
I'll start off with you, Arieh. Can you share something about your background? You are the Executive Director of the Zionist Federation, one of the most oldest and established Jewish organisations here in the UK, with a wonderful heritage. So how did you get involved in Israel advocacy?
I think I've always been involved in Israel advocacy since school, and even before that. My parents brought me up going to Israel a lot, really supporting Israel and understanding Israel as well. When I was on my gap year, I spent a year in Israel doing various different things, from learning to working to volunteering with Magen David Adom, the Israeli ambulance service. And then I came back and I was on campus at Leeds University, and I got very involved with the Jewish society there and saw what was then one of the largest Palestine solidarity groups, with some, not entirely, but some very virulent anti-Zionist, anti-Israel and bordering on anti-Semitic people, but also activities. Through that, I then got involved with various organisations, and before I was at the ZF, I worked at the Israeli Embassy as the head of digital media and Jewish community relations. And then we were working very closely with the ZF, and an opportunity came up. I think I'm one of those people, I think probably like Jacob and probably like you as well, who gets paid to do something we would probably all do for free if push came to shove. Although don't tell anyone that. But I'm very fortunate that I've always had the opportunity to work in an area that I really love and really enjoy waking up every day to go to work. Because it's something that I really love doing, standing up for Israel, talking about Israel, engaging with Israel, and really kind of living and breathing Israel whilst living here in the UK.
Fantastic. You're very welcome on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
And Jacob, it's great to have you back on the Middle East Report. Many of our viewers will know you as Tim Vince's brother.
Yeah, some people know Tim Vince as my brother. But yes.
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. So can you share with our viewers some of the work and some of the activities that you've been involved in with Christian Friends of Israel?
Yes, well, actually, I've come out for about 8 years with Christian Friends of Israel, and it's been a real privilege. Obviously, there's work to do explaining to the church and our fellow Christians to have a better understanding of Israel, both biblically, historically, and currently. And then the privilege to be able to work alongside Arieh and the ZF for those years, pioneered by Jeffrey Smith and now, sadly, the late Eric Moonman, who passed away just before Christmas. Working together on a whole range of things, involved in media and particularly the Lobby Day each year. That's a real highlight when Jews and Christians can come together and deal with issues of, I believe, real justice and real peace and of progress and what's good for everyone within that region.
Absolutely. And Arieh, can you share something about the Zionist Federation? I mean, it's been a while since I've had a representative from your organisation, but I know that when we started the programme, we had regular guests from the Zionist Federation on the programme, and I know that your organisation historically has pioneered Zionism in this nation and really stood up for Israel. So can you share what it's like to be in charge of this historic and also very established organisation?
So, look, the ZF has almost 120 years of history, and I see my role as ensuring that it has over 120 years of future as well. working together with all of our volunteers and lay leadership, our chairman, our board, to really ensure that the future of Zionism in the UK is one that's as vibrant as the history of Zionism in the UK. Israel's first president came from the Zionist Federation in the UK, Chaim Weizmann. He was our president as well. It's a really exciting and vibrant history that we are very proud of, and something that we're excited to move forward. This year, well actually last year now, in 2017, we celebrated a number of anniversaries. The most significant for the Zionist Federation was the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. The Zionist Federation is the only organisation named on the Balfour Declaration. It was written for conveyance to the Zionist Federation, which is something we're really proud about. It's something we celebrate every single year, not only on the 100th anniversary, but on the 99th anniversary, the 98th anniversary, the 97th, and so on. What we look to do is to really proliferate Zionism and the ideals of Zionism throughout the UK. I think Zionism has a bad rap. The definition of Zionism has been allowed to be defined by those who hate Zionists. Zionism is defined inherently by what anti-Zionists accuse Zionists of. What we look to do is to reclaim that, and to, as the Zionist Federation, as a membership organisation with members, over 30 member organisations spanning from the left to right, religiously, politically, ethically, everything you can imagine. We have a kind of huge spectrum of. We are that broad tent of Zionism, and that's what we look to promote here in the UK. We've got over 50,000 individual members from 30 different organisations, including direct membership as well. And that's what we are. We are the organisation of Zionism. We are here to stand up for Zionism, not to decide is the Likud or Meretz the right party to support, not to decide whether government policy is right or wrong. We're here to stand up for the very simple right of the Jewish people to have a homeland in their historic Israel. And that's what we do, and that's what we're looking to do in the future, and that's why we bring, last year we brought 23 different speakers to the UK. We ran over 200 events. We engaged with over 100,000 individuals through digital and face-to-face engagements, and that's how we look to promote Israel and promote Zionism in the UK.
Excellent. So we shall have a look now at some of the excellent work being carried out by the Zionist Federation.
If the history of the Jewish people has taught us nothing other than making sure that we have a future for our children, then Israel is that future and must be that future.
The BDS campaign has become more immoral and more outrageous than ever before. They seek to have a negative impact culturally, politically, and economically.
The ZF challenge the anti-Zionist and boycott movements across the UK. They're reinvigorating the conversation about Zionism nationally and internationally across all communities. One of their prime activities is supporting students amid growing hostility towards Israel on university campuses. The ZF provide training and resources, and for school children nationwide, they bring Israeli scientists and innovators to inspire them with the country's positive contribution to the world.
Israel is a world leader in medical and technological innovation, and has been commended internationally for its response to crises. It's a remarkable country, and we want all areas of British society to know about it.
It's 100 years since Lord Balfour handed the British government's declaration of support for establishing a Jewish state in its original homeland to the Zionist Federation. The ZF was established in 1899 to achieve just that. Today, it's the largest body working to promote Israel and Zionism in the UK, and the umbrella organisation for UK Zionism.
The Zionist Federation produce excellent publications and lobbying materials, and fulfills a vital role in making sure the truth is known about the State of Israel.
They are the twin foundations for peace, mutual recognition and security.
Government policy is an important focus for the ZF. Together with long-term partner the Christian Friends of Israel, they successfully campaigned for a review of funding to Palestinian terrorists. and launched the Pledge for Peace initiative to find a better way to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
I can't stress enough the importance of having lobby days together with the ZF, raising issues concerning Israel. I believe these are issues of justice and what is right.
Israel, certainly by Freedom House, has recognized Israel as the only free country in the Middle East. It has a very strong democracy.
Paul Charney wants to come in here. Paul?
There is a Jewish majority in that land because the Arab nations...
Paul Charney is chairman of the Zionist Federation.
He had a judicial process, he had a democratic process.
Whether through media appearances, online petitions, social media, or mobilising grassroots demonstrations, the ZF is at the front line.
We're going to hear from a few.
The ZF's mission is not just about changing hearts and minds, but empowering more people to do so. We offer extensive training courses in Israel advocacy and media training.
The Zionist Federation is doing crucial work in standing up for Israel, in standing up for the Jewish state. In doing that work, you're not only standing up for the only democracy in the Middle East, you're standing up for truth and for justice.
The ZF celebrates all aspects of Israeli society, bringing renowned Israeli musicians, artists and speakers to the UK throughout the year.
I love Israel. I grew up loving Israel. And the reason that I do this job is that I want other people to see the same Israel that I see. To see an Israel filled with love, filled with culture, filled with coexistence. And to see an Israel they want to support here in the UK.
The Zionist Federation continues to play a significant role in supporting Israel and doing everything it can to support the Jewish community. I applaud all of the work that's being done by the Zionist Federation. I support them wholeheartedly, and I would urge anyone else who's in a position to do so to do the same.
The growing campaign against Israel directly affects our lives here in the UK. Please help us, support us in challenging that anti-Israel tide, and join us in celebrating the Israel that we can and should be proud of.
That gives you some idea of some of the excellent work being carried out by the Zionist Federation in defending Israel here in this country. Jacob, very impressive video, and obviously the connections between CFI and the ZF go back way over a decade. How important is this relationship with your organisation to partner with such a leading Jewish organisation in the community?
Well, I think as Christians who wish to be friends, it's phenomenal that we're able to come alongside and to do something very practical and useful together, both in support of the Jewish community in the UK and Israel. And we've worked together over these years, and it's about that relationship. And I think it's proving the test of time. And so I think it's a very important aspect of what we do. I think we're able to bring something because of the constituency system in the country. Our supporters tend to be quite widely spread around the country. Obviously, the Jewish communities are particularly focused in certain areas, so we have a much wider reach to members of parliament across the country who are required to meet with their constituents. They're there to represent us and our views, and where we can make our voice known, which is important, because for Israel today, maybe we think of them working and defending their position in the land itself, but a lot of the challenges are found around the nations of the world, and here we are in the UK, so we need to be there. In some respects, it's another front line for Israel, if you want to follow those analogies through, and to be there is vitally important.
Absolutely. Can you share with us the significance of your two organisations coming together, Christians and Jews coming together in defence of Israel and the Jewish people, particularly around this very important lobby day of yours?
Absolutely. We couldn't do this without Christian Friends of Israel, and we are hugely proud to be working not only with Jacob but with all of his team, his supporters, and those who come along. This project was started as a joint project. It wouldn't exist as a standalone project of either CFI or the ZF. It brings, as Jacob said, it brings people from all over the country and actually ignores faith. which for me is the most exciting thing. It says it doesn't matter whether you are Christian, Jewish, or of no religion at all. What you are here to do is to stand up for Israel. We don't bring in any specific faith-based engagement, and what it enables people to do is to come together, and it brings people together who may disagree on religious issues or anything like that, but can stand strong for Israel together side by side in the home of democracy, which is our parliament.
And Jacob, can you tell us what this year's theme? Because I've been doing programmes with the ZF and CFI. Really, my first one was going back to 2009. So we've had regular programmes like this in the year to encourage our viewers to stand up for Israel in Parliament and get involved. So Jacob, what's this year's theme?
Well, I suppose building on last year's Pledges for Peace and the fact that this year Israel is celebrating its 70th anniversary as a reconstituted state in their homeland, as we discussed it through, we thought, let's see if we can slightly go with the grain and celebrate the fact that Israel have contributed so much to the world in those 70 years. There's a publication that's been produced of 70 different ways in which Israel have made contributions around the world and within the region where they are based, and to illustrate the positive aspect, and hopefully that's something that parliamentarians will be able to get behind, because in terms of things like trade relations and medical, humanitarian work and aid, Israel really is a leader in the field. And to recognise that and to be positive about that, not just for their own people, but across the communities within the land itself and within that region. They really are, in my view, a beacon of light. They're showing an alternative, a democratic, constituted state. And, like all democratic states, there can be issues, but in the main, I think it's important to put forward the positive nature of it, and it's hard to argue against.
And Arieh, sadly for our members of Parliament, they have such a distorted view of Israel because it's seen through the prism of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and yet Israel is so much more than that. Do you think that this lobby day can have a big impact in really communicating to our members of Parliament some of the wonderful achievements that Israel made, particularly in the field of science and technology over the past 70 years, and also in security, that this nation is benefiting from?
There's absolutely no doubt about it. We've seen from past lobby days the impact that our lobby day has. We saw last year, where we asked for MPs to sign a pledge for peace, the impact that had in the House and in statements that were made, and in our ability to continue that engagement with those MPs. What we will see this year, as I said, I have no doubt we will see MPs learning more and more what Israel has done for the world. And the way that we are engaging with these MPs is through the 70 contributions that Israel has made. So whether that MP is interested in the environment, in security, in technology, in science, whatever their area of interest is, there will be something there that they can get excited about. What we look to do is excite people about something Israel does. No one needs to be excited about everything. It would be impossible for someone to stand up for Israel based on what excites me or what excites you or what excites Jacob if they're not themselves excited about it. What we look to do is to give people the tools to get excited themselves, and that's when we really see an impact taking place. We have every single year 20, 30 MPs coming to engage our audience, and at least 60, 70 more MPs being engaged by our audience, by the lobbyists on the day. That is a serious impact and a major impact. And that engagement spans across every party in the House, every different stream of politics and belief. And also it includes those people who don't necessarily see eye to eye with our lobbyists when it comes to Israel, and yet they're still willing to listen. And while they're willing to listen, we're willing to engage.
Jacob, we've got the flyer up on screen. So the lobby day is Wednesday, the 28th of February, 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. The briefing, the actual lobby takes place between 2 and 5 p.m. And it's a great day out for our viewers to actually go to Parliament, to be around like-minded people and to really feel they're making a difference by standing up for Israel. Can you advise our viewers, particularly those who've never been to Parliament or been involved in a lobby day, who may be a little bit fearful of something like this, can you reassure them and tell us what the day would be like?
Yes, certainly. We've actually set it half an hour later than we normally would to enable people to travel in a little more easily. But we meet together for briefing on the subject, and often would have people interesting, different ones speaking around the subject that we're looking to lobby on. And last year we were very privileged for the first time to have the Israeli ambassador Mark Regev come, and we hope to have representation from the Israel embassy too. So we meet at a place quite close to Parliament, and the details they'll be able to get from our website or by phoning in, sending in an email on the details that we've got there. But that's a good way to just get together, to meet up. Very often people will know others, perhaps they'll come together. If they can make already appointment to meet with their MP sometime during that day, that'd be really good. And then after that, we have a break for lunch, and then we go over to Parliament together. I think being together as a whole group, it encourages each other, and actually it's encouraging to the MPs, particularly those who are supportive. But we're not just looking to engage with the supportive, we're looking to those that perhaps sitting on the fence, and even those that sometimes are hostile. But it's all part of the education process. But it's not that daunting. And what I do say is that the MPs themselves really appreciate, because of course you can meet with them in the constituency, you can follow up and write letters and so on, but actually to make the effort to come to Parliament, coming as a larger group, does have a really big impact. And certainly some that will travel in from quite long distances away to meet their MP, they're not always able to do so, but if they can, they will. And it's planned on the Wednesday, which is Prime Minister's question time, so most MPs tend to be around because they want to be in the screenshot, or possibly, if not, to say something during that debate. But then, you know, that's only for a brief period of the day, and others can join together and hopefully meet with their MPs while they're there.
Yeah. And Arieh, what difference does it make for our viewers to actually turn up on the lobby day to support Israel and the Jewish people, and turn up en masse? What kind of message does that send to our political representatives in Parliament?
It shows our parliamentarians that Israel has support here in the UK. There are two sides to the annual lobby day. One side is that it reminds the lobbyists that there are other people who share their views and enables them to engage with MPs who are supportive. The other side is it shows MPs quite how many people there are who are able to come. Last year, we were able to completely pack out the room that we were using in Parliament, to the extent that we had over 100 people queuing out the door. That is a really exciting thing for an MP to see, and it reminds MPs that this is an issue that people care about. This is not something that they can sweep under the carpet. This is not something that they can ignore, and it's not something that they can pretend doesn't exist. This is something that people hold dear to their hearts, and something that people want to know what their MPs are doing about, not just saying about. The whole point of the lobby of Parliament is that they're able to talk directly to their MPs. Our parliamentary system means that every single person in the UK has someone sitting in the House of Commons who represents them. It's not a kind of demographic representation, it's a geographic representation. Whether I voted for the Labour or Conservative MP who sits in my constituency is actually irrelevant, because once that person represents my constituency, they represent me. And that's what our MPs need to be held to account for. And so many of them are happy to do that, and they're engaged and they're excited to meet with their constituents, because it not only reminds their constituents that they care, but it reminds them that their constituents care. I don't think you'd meet an MP who doesn't want to engage with their constituents, and if you do, then they won't be there for very much longer. And that's what the lobby day is there to do, is to engage with MPs, to engage with constituents, and to engage with Israel.
Yeah. And Jacob, can you maybe break down some of the kind of practical details of the day? So usually it's one of the biggest lobbyist rooms in the House of Commons.
Yes, we try to take the largest lobby room, which I think is Committee Room 14, and that's the one we book. It's not always possible, you know, other things can take priority, but certainly to be there in the history of Parliament itself, you know, is something that yeah, it's a great privilege of democracy, really. So why not make use of it? There will be MPs from the different parties that will address us, and some from members of the House of Lords. It's a great encouragement, certainly, to them. to have an audience that's interested in the subject and is behind them when they speak out. And sometimes they have to speak out quite clearly and at some cost on the subject. So I think that's part of why we want to be there. I think it's also impressive that it's not necessarily who they might expect to be the usual candidates coming. So the fact that Christians and Jews together are lobbying for Israel is an important aspect. And as Arieh said, obviously we come to the piece from our Christian background and understandings. That's held very close in our heart. But actually in the practical outworking, it tends to be in the political world where we're able to operate in the same way biblically people like Nehemiah were able to, or Esther. These are important aspects even of our own biblical heritage to be involved. And there are Christian MPs, there's Jewish MPs, there's MPs that have no faith that actually get it about Israel and want to be supportive and are on the side of truth and justice and peace and safety. That's
Absolutely
what we're after.
And the danger is, isn't it, Arieh, that if our viewers and the supporters of CFI and ZF don't turn up, then all that does is encourage our enemies to have the louder voice in Israel, allows more lies and condemnation of Israel, and won't be able to counter that truth. How big is the opposition we need to actually counter when it comes to members of parliament voting on issues that are critical to Israel's security, for example?
I think within our political system, unfortunately, what we see too often is that the loudest voice is normally the one that is seen as the right voice. And that's not always correct. But given that that's the reality, we need to be that loudest voice. We need to be shouting from the rooftops so that everybody understands our point of view and what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how amazing Israel really is. I think often people forget that Israel is only 70 years old. Israel hasn't been around like the UK, it hasn't been around like the US, it hasn't even been around like most of the European countries as we see them today. But the amount of contribution it has made to the world, which is our topic for the lobby this year, is phenomenal. And I spend a lot of time talking to groups, and I say the same message every single time at the end, is if we leave that room and pat ourselves on our back and say we've done our bit for Israel because we've attended an event and that's all we really need to do, then we will not be making a difference. We need every single person who believes in Israel, who believes in Israel's fundamental right to exist, which should never be anything that's questioned, and sadly is all too often. Every single one of those people needs to turn up and do something. They need to turn up. The lobby day is a perfect opportunity for them to turn up and do something that really makes a tangible difference for Israel. It's all very well listening to talks and reading articles and calling a radio show and things like that, but turning up when we can have a real and significant impact on the way that our government interacts with the Israeli government and the way that our people interact with Israeli people has a real difference and is an opportunity that everyone should be taking.
Absolutely. And Jacob, I know that the idea of the lobby was really on the creation of Arieh Miller, who was a former Labour MP, was the president of the Zionist Federation, who passed away recently. Will there be a tribute made to the late Arieh Miller?
Absolutely. I've already been in touch, with his with Gillian, his wife, when a widow, and it's only fitting that we will be remembering Arieh. I'll have his voice in my ear the whole time when I'm there, because that's Arieh for you. He was masterful, really, in how he conducted what he did and coordinated, and it was a great, I keep using the word privilege, but that's what it is, really, to have been able to serve alongside him in co-chairing both the morning briefing and the afternoon lobby in Parliament. And we had, he had always had a twinkle in his eye, could be quite direct at times if he had a view to put forward. And I hope that we can capture some of that flavour when we're there. But obviously it's only just recently happened, so we will just be contemplating and make sure that we make sure there's a really fitting tribute to Arieh. Yes,
and Arieh, would you like to play tribute to the late Arieh Miller?
I think Jacob said it better than most could. It really was a privilege to work alongside Eric. He was a force to be reckoned with, absolutely. And I think for me, what I will be thinking of all through Lobby Day is how long we're spending doing anything, because Eric was so on it with the Times, he was on it with the MPs, with them speaking. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind to anyone, no matter how senior an MP they were or just one of the lobbyists coming along. Eric was always Eric, and that's something that I will certainly learn from him and take forward. And as Jacob said, we will definitely be paying tribute, both in reality but also in our minds, the whole way through the Lobby Day, to someone who not only made the Lobby Day possible and started it, but someone who made it a force to be reckoned with.
Excellent. Let's have a remind ourselves of this very important video now. It's called Do You Pass the Israel Test? And this can be applied to our members of parliament as well.
How do you respond to people who excel you in invention, creativity, and wealth? Do you envy them? Do you feel their success somehow diminishes you? Or do you admire what they've achieved and try to emulate it? These questions sum up what I call the Israel test. In the 1880s, European Jews settled in Mandate Palestine and wrought an agricultural miracle in that desolate territory, then sparsely populated by a few score thousand Jews and a couple 100,000 Arabs. The Jewish settlers drained malarial swamps, leached salt from the soils, terraced the barren hills, and planted millions of trees. They massively expanded the capacity of the land and enabled it to support a substantial Arab population. In the 2 decades between 1921 and 1943, Jews quadrupled the number of enterprises, multiplied the number of jobs by a factor of 10, and increased the level of capital investment 100-fold. Far from displacing Arabs, they provided the capital for a major expansion of Arab farms and enabled a 7-fold rise in Arab population by 1948 to a level of 1.35 million, the largest in the long history of Palestine. In other words, the Arabs came to what would soon be the state of Israel because of the Jews. By comparison, Transjordan, now known as Jordan, with the same geological endowment and 4 times the land, but no Jews, was able to sustain a population density only 1/10 of the population density of Palestine. Crucial to Israel's accomplishments were world-leading technological advances in the recovery of water through desalination, drip irrigation, and sewage recycling. Over the past 50 years, Israel has increased its population 10-fold, its agricultural production 16-fold, and its industrial production 50-fold, while actually reducing net water consumption by 10% since 1948. This huge expansion of effective water resources enabled the land to support not only more Jews, but also millions more Arabs. Today, the state of Israel, with its astonishing achievements in computer science and other high-tech fields, distills both the genius of the Jews and the misdirected anger of the failed states that surround her. The great divide in the Middle East is not between Arab and Jew, but between admiration of achievement, along with the desire to replicate it, and envy, accompanied by violent resentment. People who admire success, who pass the Israel test, tend to be wealthy and peaceful. People who resent achievement, who fail the Israel test, tend to become poor and violent. So again, how do you respond to people who excel you in invention, creativity, and wealth? Do you envy them? Do you feel their success somehow diminishes you? Or do you admire what they've achieved and try to emulate it? The Israel test is the central divide in the world today. How you answer it as an individual, and ultimately how we answer it as a nation, is a test of our own will to triumph over enemies who hate us as they hate Israel for what is best within us. I'm George Gilder, a non-Jew who has passed the Israel test for Prager University.
It'd be interesting to know how many of our political representatives would actually pass the Israel test. Jacob, this is a special year for Israel. I mean, we thought 2017 was special, but this is a special year, considering that we will be celebrating Israel's 70th anniversary as a nation reborn. And I couldn't think of a better topic to discuss Israel beyond the conflict, Israel's incredible achievements in science and technology, in medical advancement, and also in security, which Britain and Europe have benefited from. How do we convince MPs of Israel's success, and how that actually Britain needs Israel more than, sorry, I should repeat that, that Britain needs Israel far more than Britain needs Israel?
Than perhaps we would otherwise realise.
Absolutely.
Yes, well, I think as far as actual facts on the ground, certainly the UK trade considerably with Israel. I think over the past 10 years, our trade in numerical terms would have doubled in financial terms. So that there is a lot that does happen. The difficulty is that it's not really talked about very much. And they talk down certain other aspects rather than actually put it into the public domain. So the reality of what's happening and what's actually being said are very different. And I think that's duplicitous, actually. So to raise the profile, and I think the important thing is, yes, we know Israel's good with technology, we know even with security, vital links, even in the medical. But actually, some of what they do in agricultural terms and energy terms, and the inventions that they are bringing are really helping those that are less developed in these areas. So if that could be embraced, then I know that there would be a much more, taking on board the humanitarian reality of what they're bringing to the world, and also to our own nation.
Arieh, can't we blame much of the media for this distortion of Israel regarding the public perception? And it's important that our members of parliament understand the incredible contribution that Israel's made to the world. How do we convince our MPs as such?
I don't think it's fair to solely blame the media as such. I think what we see is that the media report on what they think is juicy. Unfortunately, conflict is exactly that. We've seen a huge amount of conflict in the world over the past 5 years. And unfortunately, there has also been a focus on the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. What we need to do is to remind people that if all you're doing is watching what someone else wants you to see, then you're not really being true to yourself. There is an abundance of information out there. The rise of social media, the number of influencers and influencees on Twitter, for example, has almost doubled. What we need to be doing is reminding MPs that they can't just accept what someone says to them. And that goes for us as well. When we give them the booklet that talks about Israel's 70 innovations and contributions to the world over the past 70 years, I don't want an MP to take that and say, right, this is everything I need to know. I want that MP to challenge it. I want that MP to do their own research, to look into every single one of those things, every single one of those contributions that Israel has made, and to find what they're interested in, and to find what they're not happy with, and to look into it, and to discover that actually Israel is doing more good for the world than almost any other country that exists. We saw in the video the drip irrigation that has changed the way that farmers in poor countries who have weather issues, who don't get enough rainfall, can farm their land. We saw solar energy that's being exported to India and many of the African nations to ensure that those countries are able to provide electricity to millions more people than they're currently able to provide. We've seen IsraAid, an Israeli NGO, on the shores in Greece, pulling refugees out of boats. Israel is contributing massively to the world. But if all you do is watch one news item about a conflict, then you can be forgiven for assuming that that's all that Israel has to talk about. But what you can't be forgiven for doing is for not doing your own research, not looking into what really is going on. You would get a completely warped view of the world if your entire worldview was shaped by the 6 o'clock or the 9 o'clock news. What you need to be doing is to be looking and exploring and engaging with everything that is out there in order to really oversaturate yourself and over-inform yourself rather than under-inform yourself.
And Jacob, it's incredible to think that Israel will be celebrating her 70th anniversary as a nation. Reborn, and I say that in terms of that Israel, essentially, as we look at the scriptures, is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, certainly from the prophets from thousands of years, and yet we see Israel alive today as a nation. And we consider also that during those 70 years that Israel's faced 5 major wars for her survival, has won them all, and despite that constant threat of terrorism and annihilation, but flourishes in the Middle East. Can you maybe discuss something of the unique spiritual nature and heritage of Israel?
Well, I think to some extent, need is the mother of invention, I think it's been said. And with the pressure they're under, but the resourcefulness that they have, and coming from all the different nations, they're actually able to bring together and pull. And you think, well, how would they get on and how would they actually achieve this? But in fact, Israel has. It's a remarkable success story of the number of different communities from around the world, different cultures that have been able to be drawn together. And I think possibly with the pressure that they're put under, within that region, have actually meant that they've risen to that challenge and have been able to make things go. They part of the idea was to come literally back to the land. So you had those that were actually maybe academics or very skilled in other areas with the kibbutz movement, which I was privileged to volunteer for in the late 70s, early 80s for a year, actually working the soil and literally returning to the land. And then as that's developed, then the technological side, because actually making a living from agriculture is actually very difficult, but they've managed to achieve it. And then as they've shown what they can do and actually taken interest, it's a country that's really only ever prospered under Jewish custodianship. And I have to say that the Jewish people have been good for that land and they've been good for the region. I really believe that. And actually those that work alongside, and there are a good number, both within the Christian community within Israel, Muslim and Arab and non-religious and more religious, actually many within the land itself benefit considerably when you look at all the different tables that you can consider, things like birth rate and so on. It actually works really well in the land. So yeah. They should be looked to as an example. In very much, even in biblical terms, I see Israel as a blueprint nation. I believe God is interested in nation states. I think that's the right constituency to govern it in the right way. And so there's much to commend. And I think we need to make sure that that's heard much more clearly than it has been hitherto.
Absolutely. Arieh, we have to discuss Israel in terms of being a safe haven for Jewish people. Sadly, in recent years, we've seen such a huge rise of anti-Semitism, and yet Israel is the one safe place where Jewish people are able to flee to. And what would the world be like if the nation of Israel was not there?
Unfortunately, anti-Semitism isn't something new. It's arguably the world's oldest form of hatred. For me, living here in the UK, I don't need to escape to Israel. Thankfully, anti-Semitism in the UK is not at a point where we see people in their thousands leaving the country. That being said, there are lots of people who, without Israel, would, to be very blunt, not be here. We saw around 1948 and onwards, over 800,000 Jews fleeing from Arab lands. Without Israel, they wouldn't have had anywhere to go, and they wouldn't have been able to flee. It is those people who Israel has saved, quite literally saved. At the moment, there are thousands of people from France, for example, who are making Aliyah, who are moving to Israel, because they believe that Israel is the only safe place for them at the moment. Without Israel, those people wouldn't have that safe place. Israel is so important for all of those people, but more so because I want to turn the question around. Why shouldn't the Jews have a land of their own? Why should the Jews be the only major religion that don't have a country and don't have a safe haven? And Israel is that safe haven. Israel is the embodiment of the land for the Jews, of a Jewish state, but a Jewish state for everyone who lives there. It's, I think, one of the only, or the only Middle Eastern country that has seen a rise in the Christian population in it. That's no coincidence. That's because of the equalities that people enjoy there. Where you have a non-Jewish, I believe he is a Druze, Deputy Commissioner of the Israel National Police, where you have Bedouin diplomats, where you have Christians, Muslims, Jews, and those of no faith at all serving in the parliament. It's often heard that Israel is an apartheid state, and I'd like you to show me the black South African who served in the apartheid government. I'd like you to show me the black South African who were TV presenters on national television stations. It didn't happen because that's what apartheid is. Apartheid is not equality within government. Of course there are problems. Every country in the world has problems. The UK has its own share of problems. The USA has its own share of problems. Israel has its own share of problems. But that doesn't make it an apartheid country. It doesn't make it a country filled with inequality. It makes it a country like every other country that should be striving and striving to be the best it can possibly be. And Israel is going leaps and bounds ahead of other countries to ensure that people feel welcome and feel like they have a safe place within the Jewish state, whether they are Jewish or not Jewish.
And Jacob, we're down to the last few minutes of the programme, so I've really got to ask you, how important is it that Christians stand up for Israel and the Jewish people and get involved in this very important and significant lobby of Parliament on behalf of Israel?
Well, I think it's what we can do today. I think it's something Christians need to be Christians in each generation. We weren't there, as it happens for many of us, during the war years and the terrible tragedy of the Holocaust. We weren't ourselves in this generation there during some of the very sad history of Jewish and Christian relations. But we are here today, and we can actually do something. And to actually do something practically in the direction we should be doing is a way, to some degree, of finding a new path forward together with the Jewish community. And we are, this is one of the ways of doing it in a meaningful way, which is important today in our generation.
And Arieh, this is quite extraordinary, really. Over the last 10 years, we've really seen that wall of partition between Jews and Christians come breaking down in our day. And this lobby does represent the defence of Israel and the Jewish people, and Jews and Christians coming together to make our political representatives aware that there is strong support for Israel in this nation. So I just want to thank you for the work you do, and thank you very much for the work you do, Jacob, and thank you both for joining me on today's Middle East Report.
Appreciate what you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you for watching today's Middle East Report. It's important as Christians that we stand up for Israel, we stand up for the Jewish people, and what a better way to do it than stand up for Israel in Parliament and let our political representatives know that there are Christians out there who support Israel and also need to make the Jewish community feel that they're not alone and that we are behind them. So what you can do is go to the lobby day on Wednesday, the 28th of February. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.
אוויר הרים צלול כיין וריח אורנים נישא ברוח 40 עם כל פעמונים ופתרת אילן ואבן שבויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה נפשות צורכות נשוב נרד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים קטונתי מצעיר בנייך ומאחרון המשוררים כי שמך צורף את השפתיים כנשיקת שרף אם אשכחך ירושלים השכולה זהב ירושלים של זהב של נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל